So Banging Gears, according to them, is a TV show that's centered around the rivalry between JDM cars and supercars. But really, it was just a massive convention of YouTubers and influencers and tuners and famous drivers, and they basically wanted a showdown between supercars and modified JDM cars. There's some pretty big names there. I mean, Adam LZ, Colette Davis, Mr. JW, they were the host. You had like Rob Dahm there, Dustin Williams, you had Throttle there, Automotion TV, and then you had names like Mad Mike, Chris Forsberg, Ryan Turk, Dan Kearney, Tanner Faust, and a bunch of influencers that are obviously big in the US that I haven't heard of. So it was cool to catch up with friends and also meet some new people in the scene as well. Some good tuners were there too. So you had like Lee from Monster Performance was there, had Hank from Iros Motorsport was there. I met Jordan, who is obviously Drivewire. So like it was a pretty cool experience overall. But I guess more than anything, I wish I could have been there longer. Like I wish I could have been there for the whole 3 weeks of filming rather than my 4 days, because there's just so many big names there. But yeah, it was a competition, and I guess they wanted to see who could build the best cars and drive them the best. So I think it was a cool concept. But the way I got an invite was I was at Dream Racing in SEMA 2022, catch up with my mate of mine, Steve Jones, who's the marketing boss of Dream Racing. He introduced me to this guy that was the producer of Banging Gears, who had come up with the idea. Wasn't finalised yet, and he was telling me the spiel about it, and I thought it sounded like actually a legit good idea rather than kind of one of those wanky US TV shows that dramatises everything and turns nothing into something. He actually had a good idea. Yeah, I was chatting to him about what we do here at Motive Video and the cars we build, and obviously GTR specialists, and then he watched me drive at the track, and then basically when I came back from driving, he goes, you know what? You seem to be an alright driver. Your channel seems like you build some cool cars and obviously known for GTR, so I'd love to have you on the show. And I kind of went, sweet. And then it just, obviously if you saw our last episode, you'll know that I needed to borrow a car for Banging Gears, and then obviously it snowballed into building a GTR with the guys from Throttle. And that's basically how I ended up here. But if you haven't seen that story, obviously, go back to the last episode to watch it.
Almost exactly, I guess it was 8 days into Rob being here, we were able to get the motor fired up at like 1:30 in the morning. He was set to leave the following day. So the fact that Rob was able to, man up, put in the hours, actually stay late with us and see it through, even though he knew he was leaving the following day, he really wanted to see that thing spark over and make noise before he took off. So we're, forever grateful for that, and for his help in getting it all sorted, because there were challenges along the way. Okay, so Rob leaves, and now we have a car to finish. We've got a motor that starts up, it's plumbed. A lot of the really detailed stuff is kind of not done yet, but the good thing is we know we've got a car that runs. And now it's just connect the dots, button everything up, make it look good, and think things through and make sure that we don't have any piddly stuff that's gonna hold us back. So we really picked the dream team here. And without them, there's no way this car could have been built in essentially what turned out to be 2 weeks' time.
So Rob left on the Monday, and the car had to be ready for the dyno like that weekend. So essentially the boys had to, finish buttoning the car up and get it ready. But this is where things kind of get really interesting. Con was away. That weekend they were due at the dyno, so we couldn't do any remote tuning. Now in theory, the base map that Mitch from Howtech gave us should have worked perfectly, and the fuel and ignition map and all that sort of stuff did actually transfer over fine, but for whatever bizarre reason, some of the back end settings didn't transfer over in the transfer of the map. And one of the most important things with the GTR is how you tune the car, which is TPS versus map, because obviously you got 6 throttles. So that part of it didn't transfer over, and that basically meant that it idled and it free revved okay, but it ran like a bag of whatever you want to insert into the rest of that cliched sentence. So we couldn't really do any tuning, but it just got them through for basically putting the car through some heat cycles, bedding the rings in, running it in. Like, it wasn't fun, but they got it done. But what made it even worse is their Saturday when they were booked in was actually like first thing in the morning, Sunday morning in Australia. So, they couldn't get hold of anyone. I think I was asleep in the back of my ute at Bathurst 12 hours. So it was a pretty interesting dyno session, but I guess the main objective was to make sure that the thing would work with a heat cycle, didn't leak, and then obviously do an oil change, bed the rings in and stuff. So I guess they just got that done on that weekend on the dyno, so it wasn't a total loss.
The complications started now because we needed to be at the track on Tuesday for the Throttle Supra, which was also going to Banging Gears. So not only did Quinn and I have the Supra in the back of our mind throughout this whole process because we were prepping that car as well, we're also building this R32 in the background, which basically complicated it even further.
So they tuned it Aussie time Sunday the 5th of February, and I had to leave Tuesday the 7th. Came back from Bathurst, had a day to prep, off I went. Obviously the time difference meant that I landed Tuesday morning as well. Jet lag, who cares, right? Just straight into a hire car, straight to Verona Raceway to see the car for the first time.
Essentially, you rolled up to Verona, I handed the keys over to you and said, it's your car now. Break it in, do what you need to do, get Con on the line. There's so many things that still needed to be done. Physically, it's all there, but none of it's tested. So, you know, we left it up to you to kind of take it for a little drive, make sure that things were working good, get everything bedded and working.
So as soon as I got to Verona Raceway, it was basically the first time I'd obviously seen the car in real life and got to catch up with the boys real quick, but it was pretty much straight into it. Straight into the car, got Con on the phone, let him adjust the base map, and we basically started doing like some light road tuning up and down the 1/8 mile strip there. Wasn't ideal, but you got to work with what you got sometimes. Got to the point where we realized we had a bit of a boost control problem, so we just kind of left it there and we knew we could fix it that night. It wasn't something we could fix at the track right then and there. Once we'd done that, I then basically bed the brakes in up and down the 1/8 mile as well, and then I took it for its very first drive. So there's a bunch of mountain roads around there, so I couldn't really go super fast or anything, but I could carry some corner speed, try out the brakes, get a feel for the car and make sure the base alignment and base suspension setting that I'd given them would actually then work. So yeah, that was a very important drive to have.
We brought the car back to the shop at the end of the day, and that was our first day together working on it and actually doing a little bit of buttoning up. We even took the car out and got a little bit of street tuning done on it, just heat cycling through it and stuff like that.
So no time for sleep, back to the shop with the guys from Throttle, which was really cool actually, because obviously we'd met, we'd hung out at SEMA the year before, but this was a good chance. Obviously working on cars together is always a great way to make better friends, right? So I got to hang out with all the Throttle crew, which was good. We had to pull the wastegate off, put a new wastegate spring in, and we found basically a hole in one of the wastegate lines, so we just had to kind of do the lines a little bit differently so they didn't melt. So I got that sorted. We put a carbon prop shaft in the car, and then we actually went out street tuning, which is kind of like old school tuning days, because with the time difference, it's only certain windows that we could work with Con. It was like midnight our area, so we went to do some street tuning just to kind of look for problems before we did its proper dyno session. So lucky we did, because we kind of did find a couple little tiny things, and then we had to put better spark plugs in and just things like that. So by the end of the night though, we're feeling pretty good. Mickey got to drive the car with a little bit of boost, a little bit of revs in it on wastegate pressure, and he was starting to get really excited about it, which was pretty good after weeks of pain and weeks of all-nighters to finally drive it on boost. Mickey was now really excited. I laughed because I'm like, dude, it's nothing. But Mickey was now pumped. So it's now like 2 in the morning. I think it's been 36 hours since I woke up. So yeah, I was pretty tired. So it was the first of many dodgy, cheap motels to stay in, because basically the entire trip I lived out of my car and didn't know where I was going to stay based on what happened that day. So yeah, finally got some sleep. So the next day, Wednesday the 8th of February, obviously now on American time, I headed into the workshop where they had the car to work on it. But I was on my own. The guys from Throttle were going to Vegas. They loaded their Supra up. They were going to do Banging Gears in their Supra, so they were gone. I was on my own. But I basically then had to fit up a motive headlight duct. I had to try and fix a wiring issue with the flat shift, which I couldn't, so we had to order a whole new wiring loom, but that's a whole nother story. I had to fit the Raceworks harnesses into the car and just a few other little bits of tidying up that I had to do to get it ready. Basically, before the tow truck got there late afternoon, then I had that glorious task of driving through peak hour traffic between San Diego and Los Angeles. So I got the car dropped off at D Sport, and then basically there was nothing I could do that night. So I was on my own. So just Mexican restaurant, dive bar next to the motel, and yeah, got some rest. Day 3 of our USA trip. We are at D Sport magazine. They have a dyno. And why have we come here? Well, Mike Ferrara is an old friend of mine. He's got a dyno here at D Sport. He also knows GTRs pretty well. So we're going to remote tune this GTR with Con from CID. I wanted to do it at a place I could trust, with a person I could trust. What better place, right? Plus, Mike knows GTRs well enough. If we have any issues and things like that, we can try and fix it. The more help you've got to get it done, the better, right? So cross your fingers, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get this thing on the dyno, see what it can do. So Mike from D Sport got the car strapped to my dyno. We had to pull the exhaust off and a few other things to get it onto the dyno jet, but it was all strapped on. And then Mike basically said, I've got to go. And I'm like, you know, I don't know how to use a dyno jet dyno, right? And he goes, yeah, it's easy, watch. So I got a 5-minute lesson in how to use a dyno jet before Mike just said, see you later, and went to a meeting. So I was kind of nervous to begin with. I mean, I've been around dynos forever, but I've actually only really been shown how to operate a mainline chassis or hub dyno maybe once. And I reckon since then I've only had to do it once. So it's not that I don't know kind of how or the theory, it's just more, you know, a dyno tuner's done it thousands of times, right? He's used to it, just jump in, strap the dyno, off you go. But when you haven't done it much and you're on your own in some workshop in another country on a dyno you've never even used before, I guess it's pretty nerve-wracking to begin with, but honestly, once I'd done one run, it was totally fine. So once I'd basically done a dyno run, I was feeling pretty confident. So I got Con on the phone for some remote tuning. So essentially, he's logged in to the laptop. He's controlling my laptop. But he's also on the phone to me. I had the noise cancelling headphones in, which worked pretty good. So he's on the phone to me so I can communicate with him about like if I need to get off it or stay on it or whatever he wants me to do, report feedback, and then obviously I'd send him photos of the dyno graph, things like that. So he'll say it's a pain in the butt, but honestly it's actually relatively straightforward. But obviously for Con, he wishes he could hear the car properly rather than just see a screen. You know, that's a lot different. He has to trust that I can understand what's going on with the car, and obviously been around GT-Rs long enough to know if something's going wrong. But the thing about the dyno jet is it doesn't do steady state tuning, so I guess it turned out to be a blessing that we had done that road tuning at the 8th mile and on the street, because we can't really do any road tuning on the dyno jet anyway. You can basically really only do power runs because you can't hold a steady state or a steady speed and then change the load. So kind of worked in our favour, we did that. So yeah, we started getting into power runs and yeah. It was looking pretty good right up until it didn't. So I'm sitting in a car on my own at D Sport. Mike's not there. There's no workshop there anymore, and I've got a car that's stuck in 5th gear. It could go 5th and 6th, but it couldn't go back down. Now, there was no noises coming from the car. There was no like metal sounds, no breakage. I actually watched the footage back and went, there's no explanation. So I knew it was essentially going to be a selection issue of some type. I knew it wasn't the clutch or anything, because obviously I could go 5th to 6th, 6th to 5th, but yeah, it just wasn't happening. So now I'm in this situation, I'm like, damn it, I've lost my dyno time, I've got to go fix this thing. So what do I do? Now, luckily, I do have a lot of good friends in Los Angeles. I could have rang the guys from Original Auto, but they're like 3 hours north. Greddy was an option, but yeah, I spoke to Sean from Top Rank straight away, and he basically said, yep, bring it over and we'll give you a hand, we'll stay back, see if we can fix it tonight. And I was like, wow, okay, cool, let's do this, let's go. Another tow truck, more terrible traffic, but luckily Top Rank isn't far from D Sport. So we got there, and this is where things get really interesting. Now, I know all the theory of inside these gearboxes and every gearboxes, but kind of like with the dyno thing, yeah, I've been at gearbox shops looking at them and going over it and talking to the engineers about it, but I've never had to tear one apart and fix it. I've always been, you know, talking with the gearbox guy that's doing it. So now it's like, oh well, better work it out, right? Now Sean and Ernie have pulled some gearboxes apart, but they've never done a PPG, so it's kind of like new to all of us. But at the end of the day, you know what? Just dive in, and if you know the theory, it just means the practice will take a little bit longer than normal, but it'll be fine. So we started pulling it down. Obviously, it's late at night. I think we had the box on the ground at 8:30. We had the whole thing stripped by sort of 9:30 p.m. Might have stopped for pizzas or whatever. So we thought we'd found it and put it all back together, tested it on the bench. Now we could go reverse, neutral, 1st to 5th, but couldn't get 6th. It's 1 in the morning. I'm going to bed. Another dodgy motel, because most of the time I wouldn't book a motel until I knew I was going to bed. So I think I booked the motel at 1 a.m. So that was that. So next morning, came back into Top Rank. It's now Friday morning, and I'm due to go to Vegas on Saturday. So it's Friday morning. I go back in, and once again, I'm on my own. Sean's got other things to do. People are off everywhere doing things. So I basically said, all right, I'm just going to systematically pull the gearbox apart one piece at a time, and every time I pull a piece off, I'm going to turn the barrel and see if I get gears. The moment I pull something off and I get gears, then I know I've found the issue, right? Like that's the theory. And that's exactly what happened. I just started pulling it down until I found like what fixed it. And believe it or not, the thing that made it get gears again was when I pulled the front cover off inside the bell housing. As you know, there's a front cover there, that's where the bearing, two-piece input shaft, the front bit sits inside, has a circlip on the front to stop it moving too far. And when I pulled that front cover off, I got gears again. I'm like, oh, how does that work? Put the cover back on, yep, okay, no gears. Cover off, got gears. And then I was looking at it, and basically as I was changing gears to go from fifth to sixth, or from fifth back to fourth, where the drum would turn and there's got that little groove in there and it follows it to move the selectors, I noticed that essentially the dogs at the front of the gearbox, they were hitting each other and they were bottoming out, so that front part of the input shaft would move forward and it would hit the front cover and it couldn't go any further, so it wouldn't go past fifth. So now I'm like, oh, so how do I fix this problem? So I spoke to PPG and they said, look, honestly, what's probably happened is either the circlip is wrong or that gear on the front part of the input shaft has moved forward a little bit, or the bearings moved, or something has moved since assembly, because it worked to begin with and then it didn't. We had a few options, but the easiest option to try first was to basically, luckily there was a press at top rank, was to press the bearing just down that little bit, put it all back together, worked. So huge sigh of relief, and apparently I have my PPG Master Tech certificate on the way, which I thought was pretty funny. PPG guys were actually pretty impressed, like, you put a gearbox part before? I go, no, like, oh, not bad. So I was pretty happy about that, but essentially we either had to modify the circlip or press the bearing down, and pressing the bearing down worked. It's amazing that like 1 millimeter of clearance from a thing that's assembled then gets heat through it can actually change that and cause such a big issue. But so now the gearbox is back together, threw it on the hoist to go through the gears on the hoist, and then took it for a drive with no exhaust and that sort of stuff, just to make sure it works for a quick road test. So after the road test, car was working, huge sigh of relief. There was a bunch of high fives everywhere, but we actually still needed to put the car completely back together. So front prop shaft had to go back on, exhaust had to go back on. We gave the car a check over, and me and Sean actually noticed, well, I will admit, Sean noticed, there was an ABS sensor missing in the front. Now, because I hadn't really tried to drive the thing in four-wheel drive yet, or under any power in four-wheel drive, I didn't really sort of think about it, because the prop shaft was out on that road test as well. We didn't actually get the chance to find out it had no four-wheel drive, and then he's gone, hey, there's an ABS sensor missing. And I went, well, if there's no ABS sensor, four-wheel drive won't work. He goes, yeah. There's no way the four-wheel drive's working. I'm like, oh, damn it. So I rang Mickey and said, do you know about this? He goes, oh, Quinn wired 2 of the ABS sensors into the Howtech for the road speed, because they didn't know that you need the ABS sensors for the four-wheel drive computer. So then we thought, well, we've got to find ABS sensors. Good luck, right? It's Friday, it's 6 p.m. The only place to get them is to steal them out of a car at top rank. And then we talked about it, and I thought, well, even if we do replace 2 sensors, you've got to unwire the other 2. We've got to find a different road speed sensor and make a custom bracket for a cherry sensor and all this sort of work. And then I said to Mickey, dude, do you just want to skip all this crap? Buy an ETS Pro. So the thing about the ETS Pro is it doesn't need the ABS sensors, it doesn't need the factory, it doesn't need any factory four-wheel drive stuff at all. All it needs is power and a couple of inputs from the ECU, right? So I told the guys, if you put that in, not only will the car drive better, be more modern, but we're going to avoid any issues, and we don't have time to be fault finding a factory all-wheel drive system that's 30 years old. So the boys ordered an ETS Pro and it got delivered straight to Las Vegas. So we knew we were going to have to put it in there. So now it's 7 o'clock Friday night, and basically we're done. For me, it was like sigh of relief, it's done, but I'd now lost essentially dyno time on Thursday, because we should have finished tuning it Thursday. If I'd finished tuning it Thursday, I could have done some testing on Friday and looked for other issues, or probably up the wastegate spring and even looked for more power, or whatever. Like, there's heaps of things I could have done with that day, but... Sean, how are you feeling now?
I feel good, but very beat, very tired.
We learned some things, didn't we?
We did learn some stuff. We learned some things we probably didn't really feel like learning necessarily right now, but...
We'll just say that we're master technicians now, aren't we, in certain areas?
You know, there's some things that you like to default to somebody else. You like to say like, hey, I'd like to pay somebody to do that for me. It's like say differentials. It's like, you know, I know there's a lot of guys out there that love doing the little measurements and marking the gears and all that stuff. I'd rather just drop a diff off to them and have them do it. And there's definitely, like I said, parts that you would like somebody else to do and some things you want to. And unfortunately, we had to learn some things.
Well, day 5 of this US trip, and I finally got some sleep, nearly 12 hours last night, so I've recovered from jet lag after what was a pretty epic 28-hour fix on the GT-R. So now I've got to go meet Mickey's brother at Top Rank, pick up the GT-R, he's towing it to Vegas. But first, daily tradition, Starbucks. Big thanks to Sean, all the guys at Top Rank, Ernie, for helping me get that car sorted, because like it was a mission, right? Like it was a stressful late night mission. Obviously the guys from Throttle were already in Vegas with the Supra. Susie actually landed in Vegas on Saturday morning as well, because she flew in for a birthday weekend. So yeah, she got there before me, but had to go straight to Vegas for a road trip. Only in America can you be in, well, the middle of nowhere, almost in the desert, and just have total gridlock for no reason. Don't know, just traffic just comes to a complete stop in the middle of the desert. So this is what the drive to Vegas is really like. Nothing and boring. Got to Vegas, actually went straight to the track because the guys from Throttle were at the drag strip doing the drag racing component, banging gears. And plus I thought it would be cool just to go catch up, see who's there, like, you know, Dustin Williams is there, obviously Adam LZ, Colette, and all that were there. So it was good just to kind of hang out on set, get a bit of a feel, catch up with the people I know from the production side of things, start getting a feel for the event. It was actually a pretty cool night. That was a Saturday night, and that was the last thing they had to do with the Supra, but yeah, that was pretty cool.
So our time with the Supra culminated at Banging Gears. That car had been loaded up in the Throttle trailer and brought back to San Diego. Quinn and I stayed in Vegas, and now it shows up untuned. I mean, we had a little street tune on it, but it was definitely not something we could have taken on the track. We had no four-wheel drive, a few other things that really needed to be buttoned up, and I didn't feel comfortable putting the car on track without doing that.
Sunday was actually Super Bowl Sunday. So everyone had the day off. No one was working that day. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. All I'll say is I probably shouldn't have made it to work on Monday, but I made it in to work on the Monday. Now it is Monday morning. We are at iRoz's extra factory. We've set up a dyno for Banging Gears. The GT-R's on there. We've just done a run to get some logs to send back to Con, and he should be ringing us very shortly to set up to tune the thing. But in the meantime, we've got some stickers to put on. Isn't that right, Quinn?
Yeah, let's go. Let's get it done.
So the dyno tuning at iRoz went pretty much to plan, to be honest. Obviously Con remote tuning, I was in the passenger seat, Quinn operating the dyno, Mickey keeping an eye on things. I think other than a small leak they found after a few heat cycles, everything went to plan. We did stop at 675 horsepower. Con said that, you know, to keep going, he'd rather a wastegate spring change, because obviously we went to a 14-pound spring after that first issue, because we wanted to go back to basics and find the problem. So we were operating on a single port boost controller, 14-pound spring, and we just kind of went, you know what, it's just getting too hard to squeeze the thing. Let's just stop at 675 horsepower and 25 pound. It's an untested car. That should be plenty. Now, Mickey didn't agree. Mickey was like, that's not enough. We need over 700. And I said, dude, relax. That's 675 Australian GT-R horsepower. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, it's on a main line, right? Like, so we know what the power is. And I said to him, I go, dude, the car will go 135 mile an hour, relax. And from what I'm seeing with everyone else at this event, that's plenty. I go, and we want to do circuit, we want it to be reliable, let's just leave it there. And I said, look, it's going to go high 10s, even on a slippery, unprepped track with circuit tyres, it will go like a 10.7, 10.8, 10.9 at 135. That's what it'll do. And he goes, you sure? I'm like, I know. So that kept Mickey calm, and we basically just went, that's enough, and yeah, left it there. So it was, I thought it was looking pretty strong when it came off the dyno.
As it was on the dyno, we discovered a couple oil leaks and a couple other things that needed to be remedied before we could actually put this thing on track. So at that point, it came off the dyno, went back over to the garages, and we went into full crew mode, trying to figure out where this oil is coming from, where's this water coming from, get everything buttoned up that, you know, after a few heat cycles likes to loosen up and do all that sort of thing. So, man, we were on around the clock, basically watch of this car to make sure that by the time our time came on Wednesday, that we were ready to go. And we thought we were supposed to be going on Tuesday. Luckily, we got the light end of the schedule. It bought us an extra day, and we were able to get everything done in time.
So that Monday was actually Susie's birthday. So after the dyno, I went back to the hotel. The boys just did a little bit of cleaning up. They fixed that oil leak and stuff. And then we all met up for dinner for Susie's birthday. The guys were going to fit the ETS Pro Tuesday and spend a day on the car. So they basically, after dinner, said, see you later, went home. Yeah, me and Susie didn't. But I wasn't working Tuesday, so it didn't really matter.
So Tuesday morning, the four-wheel drive controller shows up that we ordered. And that meant we could get to the track and actually install it. Now, we were dragging our feet at the hotel waiting for this thing to arrive. And I'm not lying when I say I left my pancakes at the table and ran to the front desk to pick it up when I got the delivery notification, because I didn't want to run the risk of it actually not getting into my hands. So we picked that up, head straight to the track, couldn't get right to task, pulling the rear seats out, accessing the wiring that we need to put that in. By mid-afternoon, we've got a functioning four-wheel drive system with full switches on the dash, ready to rock and roll. So we're feeling pretty good. However, the car still had not been driven hard, and we weren't sure what it was gonna do.
Well, it's my first day on set for Banging Gears at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We're at Dream Racing's track. This morning came in, just changed a couple little things on the dash, went over the car. We're warming up now to go for its first drive. I wasn't here yesterday, but the guys from Throttle were here installing the ETS Pro, the new four-wheel drive system in the car, because we found out that there was some missing factory things in the four-wheel drive system. That's the best way to do it. We're gonna go test if it works now. Go from there. I'm signed on. Apparently I'm doing rolling shots, interviews today, racing tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. But there is some sick cars here. Have a look.
The car had obviously gone pretty good on the dyno, and we'd driven it, but that's a very different to going around a circuit, right? And I didn't want to go into competition having never done a lap around a circuit, or at least driven hard into, around and out of corners, because that changes everything. So I'm racking my brain, how we're going to test this thing, and I thought, well, stuff it, I'll just go ask Dream Racing. Now, in theory, you can't test during the show other than their test sessions, but it wasn't during the show. I spoke to my mate Steve Jones and said, well, Dream Racing is open, right? Can I have a favour? But then I thought, you know what, some of the competitors might get a little bit upset. I wasn't going out there to spin full-blown laps. I just wanted to make sure the car worked. To me, that was just more about safety and having a good competition. These other guys, I don't know how many of them have had their cars running for ages or how much testing they did. That's their own agenda. I needed some type of testing, and I'd missed that chance back in Los Angeles. So I managed to convince the guys from Dream Racing to let me go out there for a few laps. I think I had about a 10-minute window, which is really all I needed. But I didn't really do any flying laps. I might have done a couple of sectors, but yeah, that had to be done.
So luckily we were able to get a couple laps out on the track as sort of a trial, a test. They weren't even complete laps. They were basically sectors that you ran to try to put a full lap together if we needed to. What we found was the typical RB26 circuit racing issues, which was oil blow-by. So we had a little bit of oil being leaked out of the overflow can. So we need to remedy that, because if you get that on the tires, it's not a good situation. We also found that the four-wheel drive that we just wired in was not working all the time. It was working sometimes, wasn't working others, and we kind of just chalked that up to a 30-year-old Tesla system. It was being very finicky.
So after the test session, we actually didn't get to do any work on the car straight away. We had to go out and do all the rolling shots, which was pretty cool. They had a camera car with a crane on it. You're driving out in the desert. So yeah, that was a pretty cool experience doing the rolling shots of the car.
Can't wait to see what this truck does.
That's why they're here. Look at that. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Idiots.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was good. We weren't supposed to film any of that, but
So good.
The camera car liked it, huh?
So once we're back from the rolling shots, Mickey and Quinn obviously did some looking over the car, spanner check, but I decided to go do some more laps. But obviously Dream Racing was open, and I went and spoke to Steve Jones and said I need to do some laps with an instructor. I've done laps at Dream Racing before, but it's like anything, right? Like, I don't think I'd done laps on that specific track layout for maybe pre-COVID. So I just wanted to get some fast laps in. So I wanted to drive a car I'd driven before, so I got the Porsche GT-R RS, because obviously if you drive a car that you know well enough, you can just concentrate on the track. And that's what I told the instructor. I said, just get me in tune with this track again, like the little tips, the tricks, the line, etc. So yeah, jumped into Porsche GT-R RS and off we went. The laps in the Porsche GT-R RS were definitely very handy. I got my confidence back in knowing the layout of that track, which would be great for the next day because I can concentrate on driving the car, not learning the track, which is the vice versa of what I'd just done, which was knowing the car and learning the track. It wasn't my PB at that track in that car. I did a 56.1 in the GT-R RS, which I was told, like on its current tyres and how cold it was, that was, still reasonable. I've done like a mid 54 there before in, I guess, perfect conditions. I said to Mickey that if the GT-R can beat that 56.1, like we're off to a pretty good start, right? I was driving a Porsche GT-R RS and I wasn't mucking around. So if I get in a brand new car that with no development really, just a quick test, and we can beat that, that'd be pretty good. Even better, could it beat the 54.5 PB that I had in the GT-R RS? I was actually pretty confident that it could do it based on some of our sector times and I guess how we're going into it. So yeah, overall the lap times in the Porsche GT-R RS were definitely worth it. What's really strange though is all the competitors had that option, including offered a discount to go do it, right? But I was actually shocked how many competitors didn't do it. I thought, like, surely, like, you want to learn the track, right? And you can go do it in someone else's car with an instructor. But yeah, a lot of people didn't do it. But I will say this, it was definitely an advantage to know the track and then go out and get some more track time in it. So yeah, the boys then went to go work on the car some more and just go over everything. And like, obviously there's a little bit of oil coming out of the catch can from some circuit work and just, button things up.
Susie's over here doing all the data logs on the laptop, right?
Yeah,
I won't show the screen, I'll just go like this. Look like you're doing data logs, okay?
Yeah.
I then got sidetracked because I caught up with Jordan from DriveWire. He had his Nismo R35 there that makes like 1,600 horsepower. He was doing the show as well. It's a car from AMS. And yeah, we went over to Iros to pick it up, and he goes, "Oh, you want to have a drive?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do." So got sidetracked, but unfortunately I couldn't vlog when we got to Mexico because, yeah, trying to drive that thing and film at the same time was not going to happen.
All right, so what do we set on?
You're going to be making between 15 and 1600, like if you really pull it out, but it's just following a torque model right now.
So a little bit.
It should move okay. I tighten the traction control up a little bit. Yeah, you're basically good to go, man.
Awesome.
And it's even got a little heat. It's at 135 oil temp, so you know we'll let it idle for a minute.
Yeah, let it go for a bit.
Trans is at 150 because it's got a blanket on it. So drag car, baby.
So I got back from driving the R35 quickly and realised that Susie might miss her flight. And then Jordan goes, "No, she won't. Take my Porsche Turbo S." Jordan's an awesome dude, and he likes to share his toys. And you know, we're both GT-R guys. He actually sold his 35 drag car to the guys at Croydon, obviously to Rob Margin and to Stu. So that we kind of were talking about all that. And then when I said Susie might not make a flight, he just basically goes, "I've got a lightly modified 9-second Porsche 992 Turbo S here. Take her in that." And trust me, I made her luggage fit into that car. And yeah, that was a cool night. A very cool night. Game day, like that was, we'd been pushed back a day for our competition, which worked in our favour. So now we were ready for game day. I got up and it was freezing cold. It had actually been snowing on the strip earlier that week. It was 0 degrees or -1 when I woke up. By the time I got to the track, it was still 1 degrees. The boys were warming the car up to get it ready to go out on track. And yeah, I think our test session started at 8 a.m. and it was lucky to be 2 degrees. Like it was freezing cold, which it was certainly tricky conditions, but obviously everyone was going to have the same problem. And the biggest problem was just getting tyres warm. Obviously the car's going to warm up eventually, but I think the guys running the show didn't quite really realise that. I don't think they realised that cars needed a long time to warm up, and even once you'd warm the car up statically, as soon as you got on track, like you actually had to be up it to warm it up and keep it warm or it would cool down too much. And it took more than the 2 outlaps to get the tyres warm, unfortunately. So yeah, it was a bit of it was a bit full on in terms of the conditions, but it is what it is, right? But yeah, I thought my tyres were warm after the 2 warm-up laps behind their pace car, but I found out very quickly that on my first flying lap attempt that the tyres definitely were not warm enough. So I aborted that lap and just used the remainder of that lap to basically try and warm the tyres up even more. I hadn't done any damage to the car, obviously. It's flat track, it just go off, turn. Didn't flat spot tyres or anything like that, so the car was fine. And then basically, yeah, got ready for, I guess, my first attempt at a flying lap. I wasn't going to go as hard as I could, but I just wanted to get a flying lap under our belt to kind of get a starting point.
But man, the first time you ripped around the final turn down the straightaway, I looked at other people and everybody's eyes were like saucepans. And even Adam looked up at me like, wow. And so to get that reaction, because literally no one had even seen the car other than heard it idle in the pits, and then to go out there and turn a hot lap like that, I think everybody realized at that moment, we came to play.
So the plan was, after the first flying lap, was to come straight in and check the car over, because obviously the car had never done a full-blown flying lap, like a proper attempt. When I came in, Adam came over to tell me that he was pretty impressed with the time. I wasn't even paying attention, to be honest. I just came in. I wanted to come in, and I'm pointing to say, hey, let the guys come look at the car. But the film crew came over, and Adam started talking about the lap time and said he was pretty impressed, and so was I actually. But I can't tell you what it is because we're going to wait for the TV show. But he also said there's a bit of oil down the side of the car. So really the oil on the side of the car was just RB26 things, right? If you try to circuit race a GT-R, you're going to get blow by. Most people get blow by and catch cans overfilling just from drag racing. But essentially, what's happening when you've got a return to sump catch can is this. During your actual drag run, and you've got the pump, obviously is pumping oil to the top of the head, then the blow by is forcing that oil out of the cam covers into the catch can. But when you finish your run, you normally put your foot on the clutch, get off the gas. Now, getting off the gas means there's no more blow by trying to push the oil out, which also includes back up the return into the catch can from the sump, which is obviously the way we return the oil from the catch can. So now it gets the chance to drain the catch can, and the oil in the head gets to empty back down. Now, the difference on the circuit is you're always at like 4,500 RPM and over, right? So you've always got decent RPM, which means the pump, it doesn't know how much throttle you've got, it just knows to pump oil. So oil is just pumping into the head all the time. Yes, some is draining back when you're on part throttle, but not enough. So as soon as you get on the throttle, now you've got the blow by, pressurizes everything, pushes the oil into the catch can, but now you've got pressurization in the return line back up to the catch can so it can't drain, so that catch can just gets full and it overflows. And then you think, oh, but then you let off the throttle, it'll drain. Now you'll let off the throttle and it will drain back into the sump, but like I said, the head's still full of oil because the oil pump's still spinning its head off. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Now you've got to add G-force to it. So you think to yourself, oh, well, that catch can's now going to drain just like it does at the end of a drag run, right? But now you're under brakes, you're under cornering. We've got semi-slicks on, like it's got some braking and turning force. So now the oil trapped in the catch can's going and is not even probably at the drain anymore. So now it doesn't drain properly because it's on a circuit. So these are all things we've learnt with GT-Rs over the last 20 years, and honestly, none of it was a surprise. If I had it my way, the car would have had an even bigger sump on it. Like I told the guys, no. An extra 2 litres is not enough. You want a 10-litre sump like what I've got on my GT-R if you want to try and really fix the problem. Because most people just don't realise with a GT-R, like it's once you got a big pump on it, man, oiling is a problem. You need a huge sump in a circuit car with heaps of baffles and everything, right? So, and the catch can needs to be twice the size of what you think. But, it's at the end of the day, the car has a perfectly good setup in it for street and drag, but for circuit, it wasn't doing it. I thought while I was at it too, while the guys were cleaning up the mess, that I'd check the logs. And unfortunately, the car had oil surge. Basically, the two right-handers at the end of the track create a big, long, sweeping 180-degree corner. So you've got a lot of corner speed when you've got those Hoosiers, like soft compound R-comps on it. So we did get oil surge. Would an accumulator have fixed it? Maybe, probably, but we just, like anything, when you've got a 2-week build, you just run out of time, and there are just things you'd like to do that you just can't get done. So, but the ultimate fix for that car would be a dry sump. An accumulator might have got us through. But yeah, the lap time was good enough that I was happy just to go, you know what? Let's just leave it. It's not worth the risk. I had found out who our opponent was by then. So I kind of knew that, I knew we could beat him elsewhere, if you know what I mean. But even if we didn't beat him on the circuit, it was very close. So yeah, we decided to leave it there.
The fact that it was able to go out on track and turn a time that was one of the quickest import times of all the cars that had showed up there with 1 lap is pretty freaking impressive. And the fact that this is just basically our kickoff point, our starting point, means that this car's got so much left in it.
So the even crazier part of all of that was I did that lap in 2-wheel drive. 4-wheel drive still wasn't working. The guys had put the 4-wheel drive control in, we thought it was working, but it wasn't. I think the car could definitely have gone like into the 52s if I had the 4-wheel drive working and just even got 5 laps under my belt. I have no doubt that it would easily have gone well into the 52s, which is a fast car. So you can probably work out now it's slower than that, but yeah, the time was definitely quicker than I did in the GT3 RS the day before, and it did beat my PB in a GT3 RS. So I told Mickey it would, was confident it would, and it was a good start. So I guess it's like anything, right? Like I was happy with what we did, but it's always that what could have been. But on to the next problem, and that was 4-wheel drive wasn't working, and we now had to go drag racing. Now, I found out my opponent was Jamie in the prototype Golf R Mark 8 TCR car. So it's a factory-built race car from a TCR series. So yeah, pretty serious car, but I knew on the drag strip that I could beat him in two-wheel drive, right? Like it makes like 300 horsepower, we're on 675. But that's not the point. The point is, I didn't just want to beat my opponent, I wanted to do a time that was representative of the car, represent the Aussie GT-R and car scene, and I wanted to, well, just smoke some other YouTubers, right? Like, let's face it, I didn't care about beating that car, I cared about where I would finish amongst all of the imports in the entire TV show. So we really wanted to get that full drive working. So Quinn started diagnosing his wiring and looking over it. And essentially what was going on is the only thing that was still factory was the wiring that turns the pump on. And that just seemed to be having a bit of a sook. So we actually just literally got a jumper pack, put power straight to it in the car park outside our garage, like with minutes to go, and it came alive. And then it didn't just come alive while being, I guess, hardwired, it then started working again. It's like we gave it CPR, it just started working, right? 30-year-old wiring. So I'm like, woohoo, quick test in the car park and straight over the drag strips. As we're driving to the drag strips, only 5 minutes away, I'm already trying to guess what I should do on the launch control and that sort of stuff. And I'm, trying to get ready. And basically when we got there, we didn't know how long we're gonna have to wait, but you can't go testing in the car park. You need to test on the drag strip. So they said we're gonna have 2 test passes. And I basically said to everyone, look, on the test hits, all I want to do is launch, right? Like once I'm in second, I know the car works. So I just wanted to do test launches and try and get the car dialed in. But I purposely waited for the other guy to go because I didn't want to like give away too much of what we're capable of. So driving back from the first run, I'm trying to like get the laptop out, I'm trying to work on the laptop, and I'm purposely driving really slow down the return road because we were meant to come straight back. But managed to adjust the launch control and go again. So the second launch bogged a little bit as well, so I knew I either needed more boost, more RPM, or more clutch riding to get the first run right.
What are you shooting for a time?
Honestly, man, at this power level, as long as it's in the 10s,
yeah,
that's where it should be, right? Like if I drive it right and get out of the hole, it'll run a 10.
Cool. Good luck.
Sweet. But the annoying part is the camera actually, I forgot to turn it back on, or I turned it off by accident or whatever before the first official competition run. Probably not a bad thing though, because it was slightly embarrassing because the car actually didn't engage full drive properly, it spun, was a bit messy, and then at about 3/4 track, the intercooler pipe blew off. So I did still do fine in the run, but yeah, the intercooler pipe blew off, which meant I didn't get a mile an hour that was indicative of the car, and I hadn't done any full runs before that. So I've come back around, the boys have fixed the intercooler pipe, they've let us fix it, right, we want to have a good competition. But here's the thing, like the pressure now is really on. I haven't actually done a full clean pass in the car yet. I've done 2 test launches and then the third launch of the competition run. None of those launches were actually right. I was getting to where I wanted to be. Hadn't done a full pass, and now the pressure's on hard. Like I want to represent the Australian GT-R scene and kind of show that, not only can we build them, like we know how to drive them. So like I've put so much pressure now on this one run. Like this one run is, like my whole career is like one run. You got one run to prove that you're not full of it, right? And to make it worse, Mickey's brother comes over, who's a drag racer, and I mean races serious drag cars, and goes, can you do it when it counts? I'm like, what? He goes, can you cut a light? I'm like, mother, all right. And off we went for the final run. So the last run was, it was sick. It's surprisingly really loose. I'd heard some reports of some supercars spinning out at 3/4 track before I got there. One even tagged the wall. And I was like, how? But what people don't realize is that drag strip hadn't been raced on for months because it's so cold there in winter. So it had no prep on it in a while, like rain and snow had been on it, etc. So when I say it was no prep, it wasn't no prep like what people normally mean, which is, oh, we just dragged it and cleaned it, but it got raced on yesterday. Like, it hadn't been raced on in months from what I was told. And man, it was slippery. Like, I mean, scarily slippery. And then I'm on circuit tires that are cold, so it's tram lining everywhere. And like, I actually thought I had 1100 horsepower on street tires. Like, it felt stupid, and I nearly tagged a timing beacon and everything. But yeah, and now I understand why some of the guys I watched previously, I'm like, how did they get out of it at 3/4 track or nearly tag the wall or whatever? And yeah, it was just super sketchy. But yeah, the run was good. I can't tell you the time, obviously, because of the TV show, but I can tell you this, Greg still owes me a beer because the reaction time was 0.04.
It was lucky for us because we got to stand on the sidelines and watch everything go down, where you had to be sitting there and actually accept all the pressure to win this drag race, which is essentially a best of 3 runs. And so I can't allude to basically what happens, but it came down to 1 run. And all of the pressure was on your shoulders to actually show the GT-R community what a GT-R is capable of at that power level in 1 pass. So seeing the last run was gratifying for me because I know what the car can do. However, I don't think we actually saw it at that point, on the drag strip at least. And so that last run, when everything finally culminated and came together and you were able to put down a solid run, it was impressive. And I'll be honest, I can't wait to get back to the drag strip so I can do that in the car, because it looks like it accelerates like an absolute animal. And it's gonna be a lot of fun to drive down the drag strip, and you've already got to experience it. So I think ultimately, you know, we showed up with a wildly untested car. It basically shows the amount of knowledge and ability that the guys that were on the team that put the car together are made of, because we're able to actually take that fully untested machine, go out here and actually have a very solid week of driving, racing, and fun without, I mean, a whole lot of headache. I mean, we did work a lot while we were there, but it wasn't like anything that was like, man, I don't know, we just can't do this. We were able to actually persevere and have a good outcome. So that was rewarding in and of itself.
No, so that was it. It was over. All I had left to do after drag racing was my interviews and a couple of other headshots and stuff like that. And then the boys could pack it up and take it home. So obviously I can't give away the results, gotta wait for the TV show to come out. When and where, I don't know. Hopefully soon. I'm sure when it comes out, we'll be letting everyone know. But yeah, the matchup that I had of going against a TCR car, I think the idea was take a 30-year-old, I guess, street car with, you know, 675 horsepower and a 300 horsepower factory-built race car. Like, these are, if you don't know what a TCR car is, go look it up. They're a factory-built race car. They're fast. I know what lap times they do at tracks here in Australia. I had no right going against that car on a circuit at all. I should not, like, it should have annihilated me. Did it beat me? I'm not going to tell you. But did it annihilate me? No. But that's driver as well, right? So this show isn't just car, it's car and driver. And a big thing I noticed on this show is you couldn't hide. I mean, we show all our blow-ups, all our dramas, everything on our channel, right? But like, at Banging Gears, no YouTuber is gonna be able to hide anything. If you could build a good car, we're gonna find out. Can you drive? We're gonna find out. And I think that's one thing I really like about this show, is there was no hiding, right? Like, there was no hiding at all. If you blew your car up, then you blew your car up. Some guys did get the chance to fix their cars and go again later, and some people blew them up a second time. But for us, it wasn't just about like beating our opponent. It was showing that, you know, Motive Video can build a reliable car, a fast car, and a car that works out of the box with our knowledge, right? We've been doing GTRs long enough that I should be able to go, here's a base setting, put that in the car, it will be fast. Does it require a little bit of development? Yeah, but I reckon the car was already, you know, 10% away from being where it needs to be, as opposed to 50% of the way there. Did we have a car that held its head high and kind of represented Motive as a brand and the GTR community in Australia and represent Australia well? I very much think so. And for me, that was a big thing about going there, is I wanted to, you know, I wanted to show that Motive Video is, we're a serious YouTube channel, man. We build cars that go fast and we prove it. It was a really cool experience, especially, look, even if the show never came out, it was still a cool experience. I got to go to America, build a car with a whole bunch of companies that we work with the guys from Throttle, catch up with mates there, have some fun. Like it just, yeah, everything we've done was worth it before the show even comes out, to be honest.
So for me, one of the most gratifying parts of this was, we were doing this after hours. So the last thing I wanted to be doing was posting on social media of what we were doing at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was out of it, literally just head down trying to get this car done, and so were the guys. So not a whole lot of information left the building of where the car was being built. And so, Banging Gears knew an R32 GT-R was turning up, but they didn't know what it looked like, what kind of power it was making, basically nothing other than it was an R32 GT-R and Andrew Hawkins was driving it. That's all they knew. I've never really built a car under the radar like that before. I've always kind of leaked stuff out, and it was neat to turn up in Vegas and have people from the GT-R community actually raise an eyebrow because the car turned up in all white with some street wheels and tires on it. And it looked cool, don't get me wrong, but it definitely didn't look like what it is. And we actually didn't raise the hood for probably a day or two after the car got there. Like people asked, and I think we showed 1 or 2 people, but we never really sat there with the hood up or the bonnet up for people just to walk by and take a look at. When the people in the know actually saw it with the hood up, it was very rewarding to hear some of the comments and, damn, that's clean, or wow, this is serious. We knew it already, and I think we were kind of callous to it by that point. But to hear those words come out of their mouths is like, oh yeah, we just showed up to a knife fight with a gun. It was a good thing, and it felt very rewarding, I think, for all of us to get that feedback from people that knew what they were looking at. Seeing it go down the front straight at Dream Racing the first time at speed, I literally felt like a little kid on Christmas morning. Like I have a video of it, and you can actually hear a giggle come out of me as you pass by. It felt so good. It's almost like your firstborn, or like, it happens every time we complete a car here and we actually get to see it at pace. And it's such a rewarding feeling. And the fact that you guys over in Australia are able to basically say, take this, and this, put it in a bowl, mix it together, it's gonna be great, and it worked, is a testament to what you guys do over there and the team that you guys have in Australia of vendors and supporters to put something together this quickly with the same recipe that you guys are using there is an honor for us to be able to do it, but it's also an honor to see it, and the goosebumps that I got watching it go down the straightaway is just, it's second to none. It could have blown up in our faces. We could have been sold a bill of goods and it just didn't perform. But in this case, it did perform, and it is performing, and it is gonna be an absolute weapon when it's fine-tuned. So in our haste to get the car actually complete so that we could actually get to dyno and have something usable at the track, we had to cut a few corners. And it's not necessarily cutting corners, more so that it wasn't to the level of what we're used to building here at Throttle and probably what you're used to building at Motive. We're using rubber couplers on the intercooler system and the intake system. We're using a rubber coupler off of the Garrett turbo to the hot pipe. These are things we typically wouldn't do. However, if we had to sit down and fab all the quick HD clamp disconnects, as well as the neck on the turbo housing, I just don't think there's any way we would have completed this project in time to get it on the dyno and make it something that was usable at the track. So now that we've got the car here, it's kind of in a completed form, it works, we know that, we can kind of go back and redo all those things and make them to our standard. However, they did get the job done and got us through, and that's testament to just all the cars that we've all built over the years, knowing that it's not ideal, but it will work. It will get us to the finish line, hopefully, and it did in this case. We have the best partners on this project. If I can do this again, I would grab the same group, because it was pretty remarkable how everybody pulled together and helped to get this car done.
Mickey has since been out to Australia, checked out the GT-R scene here, come for a drive in my GT-R, even had worked on the GT-R with me. More than anything, the relationship I have with Throttle now is worth everything we did, right? Like, forget sponsors, money, TV show, whatever, just the friendships that I have with the guys from Throttle and the business relationship Motive has is worth everything that we did, just alone, right? And the memories and the fun and the experience. Hell, it was Susie's birthday weekend, right? Like, so it was a party. Like, I look back now and go, was it worth being at Top Rank at 1 a.m, stressed off my head? Yeah, it was. Awesome. Like, those things at the time are pretty painful, but when you the thing is, when you overcome things like that, they actually become like a good memory. Like remember that time we're up till 1 a.m. tearing a gearbox apart and it didn't work, and then the next day, and then I'm ringing other shops and I'm trying to find a replacement just in case I can't fix it, and like already coming up with like, at the time sucked. Right now, awesome memory. So, you know, but what happens with the car now? Well, Mickey he wants to do more with it, and there is no doubt that I will end up being involved with that car like forever. Mickey wants to do more with it, develop it, get on track himself, have fun with it. I want to do a GT-R challenge and a GT-R festival in the USA, so I want to drive it again. Like it might do this versus that with who knows, right? Like possibilities are endless, but the car will definitely keep going. It will keep getting developed because Mickey's got a little taste of GT-R fever after coming to Australia. And yeah, he's not gonna be able to help himself. But yeah, lastly, just big thank you to the guys from Throttle, Mickey for all the fun, Quinn working his ass off to get the car done, Rob Arbolino worked his butt off. So, but most importantly, like a big thank you to the companies that actually put financial support behind the trip, because people don't realise spending 2 weeks in America building a car, and I didn't have a camera with me to film content, so that's why there isn't as much content as I'd like. It's expensive, man. Like I had to live in America for 2 weeks. If anything came up, you just got to do it. So yeah, big thanks to Garrett, Raceworks, TurboSmart, Howtech for their support on that. And obviously Platinum Racing Products helped make the entire build happen. They got an engine ready, shipped all the parts over, provided a lot of parts for the build. Obviously Throttle had all their partners as well. So yeah, there's a lot of people to thank. Like without all that, these things just don't happen. So yeah, very grateful that we actually get that support to build these cool things and make some cool stories. So it's more to come though. Make sure you subscribe, right?